places that we never imagined we'd be. We don't want to go through any grief-related event that we've dealt with. But the reality is, grief is tantamount to growth. Thank you all for coming back to another episode of the Grief Empowerment Theory, the podcast that shows the value of repackaging all your negative energy and all those challenges of emotion so that you can unearth all those hidden talents, skills, and the gifts that you'd have never known if you hadn't gone through your struggles. Learn how to transform all that grief and discover your infinite potentials. And today, I have an incredible guest. Her name is Miss Lynn Lewis, and Lynn has a very interesting circumstance. She is a grief coach, but she has a very particular niche that she services. And I can talk all day about it. So before I go any further, you know what, Lynn, do me a favor and just tell the audience where you're from and give a little bit about your background and things like that in your life coaching business.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you for having me on. Yes, as you heard, my name is Lynn Lewis. I reside in the U.S. on the East Coast in Virginia. I am retired from the automobile claims industry as almost 8 years ago. It was a good journey, but I'm glad to have had the opportunity to move forward into this space where I am now. I am, as you just heard a minute ago, that I am a grief coach, I'm a grief educator, and I found myself in this particular arena after the unfortunate death of my one and only child, my favorite child. My son, Daniel Brooks-Lewis, passed away 5 years ago. And so that is what basically pivoted me to where I am now as a certified grief coach and educator.
Okay. Uh, Absolutely. So sorry for your loss, but as I always say, when there's grief, there's there's something to learn in the chaos of the grief that we're dealing with. And it looks like you have clearly channeled that energy into being able to be a grief coach, to do particular things to help society. As a matter of fact, talk to the audience about the type of grief coaching that you do.
So basically, my son's death was by suicide. So that is my niche, if you would, if you like to think of it that way. I do help others, but because that's my avatar, that's my lived experience. So I tend to lean in that direction toward moms and persons who are like moms that have, unfortunately, and joined my club. I do help men as well, work with men as well, but so I tend to lean toward the moms that are like myself. And I work with persons who have acknowledged and accepted that this horrible thing has shown up in their lives, but they've also made the choice to move forward. They are desiring to, despite their loss, they are desiring to move forward to live an impactful and meaningful life. So that is basically the persons that I work with. I do some one-on-one coaching, speaking to groups, um, and doing some mini workshops along those lines. So that is, in a nutshell, what I do and how I serve.
You know, it's interesting because a lot of people don't realize that when a death happens, people think that, hey, it's a part of life, and it is a part of life.
Hmm.
You don't look at the people that that person leaves behind, especially their parents. I think we talked about this backstage, where I share a certain affinity to why you do what you do. I've seen the impacts of what loss can do to a parent. It can change. As a matter of fact, it's interesting. I was looking at a organization called Evermore, and
Mm.
they were talking about, first off, roughly people that are roughly 60 years or older. About 9% of them lose their children,
Mm.
and when that person gets up to 70, that number is as high as 15%. And what's interesting is, he said, within that, a big issue related to mental health, emotional health is very problematic. A lot of uh, complicated grief steps in, especially with the senior population, or people that are, again, between what we'll call them midlifers. I'm 50,
Hmm.
52, so I'm there. But the point I'm making is, you know, there are natural cognitive issues related to age, and then the impact of loss, and especially a severe loss where it's your adult child. This is somebody that, you know, hey, no matter how old they are, that's your baby.
Right, right.
So, um,
Yeah.
talk to me about how you have, let's say, one-on-one consultations with people that have lost their children, and how do you help them kind of walk through and navigate their challenges?
Okay. I what I do is partially for me. It's helpful for me. It's a part of my own healing process and navigating my own journey. And so that's one. But in addition to it being helpful to me, just me helping others, um, I know that it's helpful. I've been told that I have proof of that from testimonials and whatnot. But if when I sit down to talk to someone, I first determine if they truly are ready to move forward. It's a non-judgmental conversation, and because if they aren't ready to move forward, then that's not my client. Um, Now, when I say move forward, there are still days that you don't want to. There are still days that you just want to be, that you want to just, and my term is, I just some days want to go fetal, mean I just want to curl up in a knot and cover my head over. But that's not the daily, that's not the norm for me. My norm is, despite this, my son is not coming back. I get to choose how I navigate. And so that's basically what I say to persons that I speak to, whether it's one-on-one or a group, is if you are ready to, move forward, and you know that, or you think you are, let's talk about it. Let's talk about, how you want to do so. Let's put a plan into action. How do you want to remember your person? How do you want to keep their memory alive? How do you want your life to look going forward? And so we just go through a discussion, and if they say yes, I'm ready, move forward, then we move forward. And there are several different modules that I use, and one of the main things I talk to people about their own health, because as you probably can attest to, having gone through, tragedy in your life, um, it's not the time to let ourselves go, but it's easy to let ourselves go because we're grieving, and that grief is so huge. Tell, okay, I just, and you find yourself just not taking care of yourself. And when I talk to people, it's about, okay, today, if you can just, get up, get dressed, you know, then you're making leeway. So those are just some of the things that we have conversations about when someone comes to me and think that they are ready to embark upon a grief coaching journey. Um, and again, oh, the other big part of what I talk about, because not always, but usually it's around a suicide death or maybe a drug overdose, is the stigmas that's attached to that, particularly, and I can speak to the stigma that's attached to suicide, but we spend time talking about that and how to navigate those emotions. Um, and I know that it works because I've had people come back to tell me that it's been beneficial. They've been able to use the tools. I'm also I label myself as a serial podcast guest, and I've had much input, much from people who've said, "Thank you for sharing. This is helpful," or "I'm sharing this with my, mother or sister," or So I know me telling my story and being choosing to thrive in the aftermath of my son's death is beneficial. As heart wrenching, gut wrenching, heartbreaking, unexplainable as it is, it's still. I know that it's a benefit, and I'm going to um, keep telling it until I'm convicted to do otherwise.
The the interesting thing is that in order for you to be able to do this to help so many other people, you unfortunately had to go through a challenge yourself. But reality is the practical knowledge that a person gains gives you the incredible ability to have personal insight and empathy with a person. So I know when you sit down with your clients, they're comfortable with you. And when you start your initial journeys with them, you know, how long do you usually do you have like a strategy plan, or is each individual that you work with different? Some may take, you know, a month or two, some may take 6 months. But what is your normal practice when you actually do have a client that you work with in that respect?
Just as grief is different for everyone, everyone's grief journey is different. I keep that in mind. So yes, I have, you know, uh, I guess I can say templates or ideas, but it's really it's really geared toward that person. Some people decide, I'm better than I thought I was. I'm doing well, so it may be a 2-month conversation. Then others, it's going to take a little bit longer. And then I always leave the door open for people to come back if they need maintenance. Because again, with grief and with loss, um, there are ebbs and flows. And so I always leave the door open for people to come back. But really, it's not one size fit all, if you will. It is, what does Jay Lewis need? What does Lynn Lewis need? And it could be for the same person. You know, you think about siblings and the loss of a parent or a grandparent. they are grieving for the same person, but their grief is going to be different because everybody has a different type of relationship, different type of thought process, just how they manage their emotions generally. So that's why it cannot be a one size fit all. It's geared toward what the person needs. And my job is to help them, not to tell them what they need, but to help them, to give them ideas, but they get to choose because it's not about me. It's helpful to me because I'm still processing my own. And I learn from my clients and from the people that I um, get to spend time with. But at the same time, it's about them and what they need because they've come to me and said, you know what, I'm kind of stuck. I want to move, but I don't know exactly how to do it. And so that's how we then connect and have those conversations and that coaching time.
Yeah, thank you so much because that right there, it it launches into a whole thing. Let's double back for a second. Talking about that stigma that you were talking about around suicide and around particular losses like drug overdoses, stuff like that. You know, you how do you go about having that conversation with them, letting them know, listen, what happened to your child, it's not your fault. You know, yes, there's you may have a certain guilt behind it, but don't let the world convince you that because your child, who is a grown adult, even though they're your child, they made a decision. You know, how do you help them to process through that part?
Really, I share with them what I do for myself. I have also created a mini workshop to respond to stigma. It's called Sting the Suicide Stigma, and Sting is an acronym. Um, so I use it on myself when I need to, when I find myself in those spaces. But for instance, the S in Sting is to stop giving that stigma so much energy. Stop ruminating. And it's normal to do it, but you again have to make the choice to say, okay, stop the woulda coulda shoulda, because if you had seen them the same day, that doesn't mean that what happened would have not happened. So try to stop putting so much weight on, the what happened. So stop that. And that is one of the things that I talk about to myself as well as to others, because that person's story has ended. Their story here on earth has ended. Um, and you can't change that, but you get to decide how you manage it, how you navigate it. Stigma is something that a great number of people or society believes. There's a belief that they have. Um, and so we can't change how they think about it. We can't. And honestly, before my family's experience with suicide and my son, I had some different thoughts about suicide. For instance, I thought it was a selfish act because did they think about what was going to happen to the people that they left behind? But as I've been on this journey, as I've educated myself, as I've learned from other people, when someone, and I'm not going to get into the scientific piece because I'm not well studied in that area, but what I've read and what I've been told is when someone gets to that point, that it's not about other people. And a lot of times people think if I leave, it's going to be better for my people that I'm leaving behind. And also that whatever the pain is, the problem, the mental agony, whatever that is, it's they think that the only answer to get rid of it is to take leave, is to end their lives. So therefore now I don't see suicide loss as a selfish act. And and then if you talk to some persons who um, have tried to die by suicide and didn't, they will tell you that when they make that decision that I'm going to end this, I'm out of this pain, I'm out of this misery, it's almost like a relief to them. So that's in the suicide community. That's what we're told that so the stigmas can be bad. Honestly, I have not had to deal with a whole lot of the ugly ones, um, but um, I know some people that have, and I've had to walk some people through to be okay with knowing that there are people that think that way about my child, about me, or my person, um, because we cannot help what people are going to say. And I've said this, I think I have it in my keynote speech that I can't change what my son did. I can't help how people think about me. I can't help how they think about him, but I do get to choose how I manage it, how I navigate it. So,
And the reality is, Lynn, most people, everybody who doesn't have a personal connection with someone who's lost themselves to a suicide, they're going to see it differently anyway. They are going to look at it as a selfish act because, again, it it may appear to be a selfish act, but the the person going through it is trying to be as selfless as they can because they they actually think that they're causing a harm to the
right.
people you love. Where, you know, the outside they may see it a certain different way, but you know what? That only adds extra pain to a person's situation. How do you help them not to focus on those outside stigmas? Because I know, again, telling people, hey, don't worry about it, don't, that's one thing. But what techniques do you use to help them to not focus on that?
Again, I use the sting that stigma, and I also um, encourage people that when those things come. So I'll give you an example. One of the stigmas around suicide is oh, that your person is going to hell because of what they did. It's an unforgivable sin. That's a big one. It has not been said to me, but it has been said to some of my friends and I believe somebody that I worked with. But um, so I try to give them responses to those stigmas that might come at them. So, for instance, a response to that one particular one is, "How do you know you weren't there? You don't know what their last conversation, their last words. You don't know what they were, and if if what you said is true, how is that helping this grieving mother? For you to say that to a grieving person, how is that helpful? And usually people will shut their mouths if you talk back to them. Now, of course, some people, they haven't found their voice yet. They are not able to say that, and so we just kind of work on them finding their voice, being able to say that, write a letter, even if you don't deliver the letter, write a letter to that person to tell them how you feel that they need to mind their business or whatever you want to
Right.
say. Um, and so those are a couple of techniques that I use for the stigmas. Um, and of course, this is said in general around grief, but people would say, well, they're in a better place. So a lot of times suicide is attached to mental illness. Um, and were they in a better place? They're not in misery anymore. Again, while that may be true, you're not helping the grieving person, the grieving mom, the grieving parent, sibling by saying stuff like that. So, what I, again, share with my clients or persons that I'm speaking with in order to kind of, get them not to feel so bad about it is again to say to the person, if at all possible, you don't know that. You don't know that. That's not helpful to me. Please stop. If you don't have anything good to say, just don't. And then I also teach people to, well, yeah, help people to remove themselves, if possible, remove themselves from a situation. And I said this to someone just yesterday. I said, every comment does not deserve your response.
Understood.
Every comment does not deserve your response. So if you can remove yourself or don't respond at all. Just let them have whatever it is they think. Okay, that's what you think.
And what's interesting is that is very incredible insight, because when you teach a person how to use water in a fire situation, normally people respond with fire, and that doesn't work. But when you learn to use water, you befuddle that
Hmm.
person who is waiting for you to respond in kind. So now what you're doing is, like you said, you're doing two things. You're diffusing the circumstance,
Hmm.
and you're making an active choice to walk away from it.
Hmm.
You're basically and see, sometimes people that mean well, they don't understand how hurtful they are in attempting to mean well.
Right, right, right.
Then they begin to take it personal when you retaliate, you know? So, but what you just said is important. Learning how to retaliate is key, because that keeps you from, again, keeping this whole thing going, making it fire versus fire type of situation.
Hmm.
You're now using the water. So, you know, I think that's really great. The audience, people in our audience, they need to know how important it is to use these type of techniques, these type of avenues, because in the world that we live in, there's a natural combative nature to
Hmm.
But when you're going through a grief, especially the grief of a loss, especially the grief of a child loss, especially the grief of a child loss due to suicide, you're looking at major impacts.
Hmm.
And now someone else is criticizing you for the actions of your child.
Hmm.
And of course, look, as a mom or a dad, you know, you're going to defend your kid. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter what has happened. you know but now that other person realizes that, and they wanted the confrontation. They wanted it, even if they had the intentions of being helpful. you know so you talking to your clients about learning how to diffuse circumstance, learning how to, I hate to use it like this, learning how to be the bigger person. You know,
Yeah, and sometimes it can be tiring, um, very tiring and exhausting. So I also suggest to people to that may be a time to talk with your support group if you're part of a support group, or look for a support group. Try out a support group, because in a support group they're like-minded people, and usually, and that will help you to, because they may have experienced similar, and they will have experienced similar responses from people, and then you different cultures, they manage different. So it's just, it's a lot to manage, can be exhausting, but and on different days, I was going to say too, on different days you may respond differently. One day you might think, okay, this person, they don't know what to say, so they're just saying what's making them comfortable, and you walk away. On another day, you may decide, you know what, I'm going to have a conversation. I want to, talk back. So, there are a lot of moving parts. There are a lot of moving parts with that whole thing of the stigma. The stigma. Um,
it's interesting because, like you said, there are so many moving parts, and at the same time, the person going through the grief, they're moving in slow motion, where everybody else is moving at Mach 10. So how do you how do you teach them how to navigate through the situation and not to worry about the rapidity of what somebody else, especially like you say, if somebody's coming at you with a certain attitude towards what has happened, they're hitting you with rapid fire questions. And the human brain, especially after grief, clearly has a hard time responding. There's something called grief brain, and
mhm.
it takes some time to be able to modulate and formulate a proper response to a situation. So now you look like, you know, you look like you can't even have an answer to the question. How do you help the people you work with navigate through that? How do you help them to understand that it's okay to, like you said before, to walk away and not have to worry about having questions and all that stuff?
I remind them that they don't have to have an answer. They can either say nothing, or they can say, this is not something that I want to talk about today. Or, I'm not talking about this today. Or I don't see why that matters to you. And then I also, a part of what I share with people is called the Griever's Bill of Rights. It's nothing that I've formulated on my own. You can find it out on the world wide web. But I do talk about, that you have the right to say no. You have the right to have boundaries. You have the right to talk about your person if you so desire. You have the right not to talk about your person. Um, and you have the right not to compare. And actually, comparing, I don't think that's one of the Bill of Rights. But aside from the Bill of Rights, comparing can be detrimental, because you may see someone that's had a similar instance, and you'll say, well, they are doing so well, they seem. But again, everybody's grief journey is different. People see me and they say, how do you do it? How do you talk about your son? How do you, help others? How do you know all of the how to's? And for me personally, first of all, before all of this happened, I knew that part of my purpose for being here is to encourage women. And so after my son's death, I'm still doing that just in a different way. I'm still encouraging women that you can still have, a meaningful and impactful life should you choose to do so. For me, how I do it is because I want other people to know that they can do it too, then I choose to share. um, because I know that some people have not yet found their voice. Some people, one of my church friends, her child did not die by suicide. Nevertheless, her child passed away. One of her children passed away, and she said, "Lynn, I can do one-on-one conversations, but I can't do what you do. I can't stand in the front of people. I can't talk to a group of people. That's okay. I got the voice for both of us." um, and um, so and then my sharing my story is so helpful to me, for me, on my journey, and it is one of the ways that I choose to keep my son's memory alive. I don't enshrine him. I don't put him on a pedestal. I don't, make him to be an angel, anything like that. But it is one way because his life mattered and he did some good things in his life. And so that's the way that I honor his excuse me, honor his memory. Um, but what I do is not for everybody, period. And I always say, I'm speaking from my lived experience. So, what I'm sharing with you, your audience, is what I've learned from my experience and that of those who have given me permission to use their experiences or to talk about their experiences. So, that's how I try to help people to do that.
It's interesting. As one of our listeners, Miss Marvetta, she was saying your testimony it is healing.
Healing, it is.
We all handle grief in different ways, and that's true.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know, it's very interesting. First of all, thank you so much, Miss Marvetta, for that comment because it helps to it helps to be able to let people know that you have to hear what someone else has gone through in order for you to understand where you are in your journey. You know that that person has been there. They
Right.
may not relate to your particular situation, but what they are doing is understanding that there's someone that they can, again, like I said before, someone they can empathize with,
Hmm.
someone who can hold their hand and help them walk that journey.
Exactly.
Miss Lewis, let me ask you, you like you said you do one-on-one consultations, but what are some of the support groups that you work with and how can people get in touch with you?
Okay. I work with, and I say work with because it's loosely. I'm not. Um, I don't. Well, yeah. In a way, in other words, when I say I don't work with them, as far as I don't give, classes or what. So I'm not employed with a particular group, but one group, and especially if any of your hearing audience is in the Richmond, Virginia area, it's Full Circle Grief Center, and they offer all types of services. This Full Circle Grief Center, and their offerings are free for the groups, and they have a group for just about every single loss you can think of. Then Grief Share is another group that I share with people. They have group meetings all over. I know all over the United States. I'm not sure about outside of the United States. And it was another one Mending Hearts Ministry. Mending Hearts Ministry is another one that is specifically for mothers who have deceased children, not just suicide, but all types of, from different types of reasons. So those are the three that comes to mind right away, that I always refer people to that's looking for support. Then, of course, if you, I see that you're running my um, website on the bottom of the page. You can
Yeah.
always reach me there. I'm on Instagram as Grief Coach Lynn. So you can direct message me at Grief Coach Lynn on Instagram. Um, and so those are basically the main ways for people to reach me. I do have an email address. It is destined to thrive at outlook.com. Destined to thrive at outlook.com.
Okay. Well, again, see, so many people don't realize something. It's the person who is chosen to transform their
Hmm.
grief and make it into a gift. You know, not a lot of us have the strength. You talked about that. You said there was a young lady that you work with who was saying she can't do what you do. You know, and again, that may not that may be because you know what? That is not her calling. It was
Right.
yours. It was yours. You know, um, every circumstance affects someone differently. And
Hmm.
I just again, I Lynn, thank you so much for sharing your in-depth knowledge, B, sharing your personal story and how it's encouraging you to be able to help other people. Unfortunately, it is the gift of grief. It's listen, people end up being gifted through this curse of loss, but how you choose to respond to it,
Right.
that will let you know what you'll do, and you have made that choice to actively respond to the unfortunate passing of your son.
Right.
And now to let other people know that, you know what, I'm here for you. I'll help you through this. Again, the outside world may see things one way, but you're in a small, exclusive community. And there are people within that community that are going to be here for you, you know. So, again, my guest, Miss Lynn Lewis, you know, expert, expert grief coach that works with people who have lost, women especially who have lost their child. Um, Most of the suicide or overdose, circumstance. But she's in a very, she provides a very niche service to a very marginalized community of people. So I just want to say thank you again for that. And I appreciate you sharing your time with us. Again, Miss Lynn Lewis, you can reach her at you can reach her at www.destined to thrive grief coaching. outlook.com. And she also, again, she was so gracious to offer her Outlook information. So Destined to Thrive at outlook.com. And again, I can't talk enough about you, Lynn.
Thank
The time that you gave me. So thank you so much for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, we're done for the day. I'll see you next week with another episode of the Grief Empowerment Theory. And I'm going to let you see how you can use your challenges to your advantage, just like a person like Lynn did. Again, there is an unfortunate gift in the grief that we go through. I'll talk to you later. Everybody have a good one.
Good day.